Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'm going to make a promise. It's a cloud-free presentation. We're coming back down to earth. We're going to plant our feet on the ground. We're going to talk about how we actually deliver quality. Cloud, or whether it's on-site or otherwise, is a technical delivery mechanism. It's not a linguistic challenge. So, one of my biggest challenges in Asia Online is how do we overcome the traditional mindset? Challenges of a machine can never do better than a human. This is the way I've always done it. Why should I change for a machine? Many other factors. You know, it's a little bit, what do you call it, small-minded sometimes. But there are many people locked in that mode. There are many LSPs that are afraid to upset their people that have been working for them for 5, 10, 15 years. Right? It might rock the boat. And I had a discussion over breakfast this morning, a little bit along those lines, where there has to be a transition, which is the correct approach. It's not a take this in and if you don't like it, tough. Right? There has to be a transitional approach. How you merge it into your infrastructure so that you can go from being with the dinosaurs and carving out your Rosetta Stone, or moving across to a more modern environment. Right? So, how do you move to this modern automated translation solution that integrates human as well as machine to deliver the best possible approach? So first of all, I guess it's important to understand where MT is at today. So we've come a long way. We started with early rules base, then we had things like Babelfish. Quality hit a bit of a plateau with rules after a period, and then eventually processors, CPU, and data became available that could handle a lot of this. Right? 9/11 triggered a big bunch of research funding, and there's many people in this room that are probably very grateful for that funding. It's moved us along a lot. Okay, we had early SMT vendors like ourselves and some others in the room. Then Google made a switch to SMT. Right, they got rid of their Systran backend and switched to their own SMT. Their recent switch, as I talked about yesterday, to an API where you're billing, and the same as Microsoft just announced last week, is actually quite a big milestone for the industry. It's a very important milestone, because what it says is there is value that somebody is willing to pay for with machine translation. It's not just something free or out of the box that you stick in and you use. It's free for everybody. So assigning a value to that is good for the industry as a whole, and particularly good for companies like my own. Right? So Google helped us drive acceptance, right? But there's a line called what we call the good enough threshold. Okay. Once you start getting over that line, you say, well, that's good enough. I can use it for this. I can use it for that. It might be translating discussions or various other things. You see LSPs starting to adopt various other things clicking in there. New techniques start to mature, and you head into the hybrid platforms that many are talking about right now. Right? But there's really 3 stages. There's experimental, right? Then there's gist. That's where a lot of the MT is still at today. And now we're heading towards near human. Notice I said near human, not human, but near human. You're getting closer and closer. The reach of translation starts to get very interesting. You have the top of this pyramid here, and I talked about this yesterday in our workshop briefly, where you have your traditional products and various other things. That's the model that LSPs have worked in the past. But opening up the bottom half of this pyramid to LSPs, machine translation in general, some of it needs to be proofread, some of it does not. There's many sensitivities, and in the previous presentation, I've got a situation in Thailand that's a great example of where you do need to moderate. So if you say something bad against the royal family in Thailand in any forum, right, it's against the law. Very simple, and you will be arrested. Under Thai law, a webmaster can also be arrested if they don't take that post down very, very quickly. So the owner of the site is responsible. So each market that you host content in, you need to be aware of some of the legal challenges as well. So there's a lot of challenges into getting into each set of the content. But there's many different business models that LSPs can look at. The one we see all the time, which quite frankly is usually the wrong one, is, oh, when we've got a client that wants MT, we'll call you. The wait and see model. It's not that useful. You're not really out there using MT, it's just when they come along. Another model we're seeing a lot of success in places like travel, antivirus, and many others, is building a product. Going out and actively, as an LSP, using your linguistic assets and creating an engine for a purpose. And then going and reselling access to that engine that you've customized, that's your unique product, to the end parties. And that works very, very well. We've seen that work successfully in many cases. Obviously, there's the ability to reduce project costs, and that can be quite considerable. You'll see in the case study that's coming up at the end of this presentation an example of that. And you'll also see faster delivery. If you can take out one of the slower elements of translation, which is the human translation element, and yes, you might spend more time post-editing, you might spend more time in other areas, but if you can take out one of the most slowest elements that often you're waiting for people to translate before other people can do their tasks, you actually get a net gain in many, many places. Okay? And of course, there's expanding business relationships. So if you are already doing work for a customer, and you look at that pyramid and you say, well, that customer's got those forums over there, or they've got this ability where it'd be really good, I think, for their business if they started doing social in this way, using translation. Those kinds of things. So adding functionality. Here's an example of our chat platform where you've got 4 different people speaking 3 different languages to each other in one room. And they're talking about where to find the best art in Thailand. They're speaking Thai, English, and Indonesian. This is all real-time chat. Okay. Same type of thing goes in the customer support model. So being creative and looking at how you can become social and how you can plug things in to your customer. So you're not just offering translation. It's great to customize an engine and go out and do something for them in their traditional space, but if you can then take that investment in the engine and offer a new value add, take that engine and really give it to them in whole new ways that they haven't seen before, there's real value in that. So then we get on to delivering quality translation. So this is where we start to talk about near human. But first of all, let's be honest. Whether there's human or machine, there's going to be mistakes. We all make mistakes, but machine translation errors often make us laugh. But sadly, human translation errors are the ones that make me cry. There's a big difference, right? Often they're avoidable, but it's not managed. So let's start with the source first. I fed this sentence into 3 different translation engines, Systran, Google, and Asia Online. MT ain't no magician on bad source text. Of course, it's going to give you complete and utter rubbish. It's garbage in, garbage out. So one of the first things we do with our customers is find ways to manipulate and improve their source if it's low quality. So things like user-generated reviews, blog posts, and so on. We have techniques and tools that can analyze that and adjust the source to be better quality. This is particularly good if you're translating legacy source. So you've got a couple of 100,000 hotel reviews. They're sitting there. You want to translate them into another language. Do the analysis up front. Run a spell check over the whole thing. It's not that hard. There's many other tools, obviously, that can be applied. Right? But bad source text can come from many places. It can be simple as 2 words glued together, periods missing, bad OCR, all sorts of things. And there's ways to fix this. When we built our Thai system, we did a lot of OCR, and we actually built a translation engine to OCR, bad Thai OCR, into good Thai. The OCR makes consistent errors. So we actually built a Thai to Thai translation engine, right, to convert that through. It took it from 91% accuracy to 98.6% accuracy. Right, there's things you can do to fix many of the source problems. Okay, now when you look at MT systems, you have to look at it from the perspective as, what is my goal? What is my purpose? And quality is a factor of purpose. Sometimes you don't need perfect quality, other times you do. But if you were looking at your evaluation, you say, right, well, I want to evaluate a sports car. Pick one of these 3 to test drive if you want to evaluate a sports car. It's pretty much a no-brainer, isn't it? Right? You pick the one that's high performance. Well, when people go out, often they look at machine translation and all machines are apparently equal. Right? Often they don't understand what is the purpose of a machine. Right? How does that machine translation differ from the next? So Asia Online as a company is a publisher. That's why we're called Asia Online, because it's a rather funny name for a machine translation company. We publish content in Asian languages. So early this year, for example, we translated all of English Wikipedia, 3.6 million pages, into Thai in 4 days. Right? We focus on the publication process. And that's the difference when you go from something that's designed for gist, and if you talk to most of the people in the room, all the last few days, they're talking about machine translation as gisting. Getting the message across as gist. Good enough or close so you can get an understanding. And our model, that's not what we want. We've built our systems from the ground up to focus on the publication process and to get as close to publication quality as possible, with as fewer edits as possible in order to publish. It's a very big difference. Because, you know, you can't expect a machine to understand your audience, your preferred writing style, your preferred terminology. You've got to teach it. If you throw something into Google, Google doesn't know that. It just gives you back its general output. Now, the idea of Google, though, is translate anything, anywhere, for anyone, so you can get a general understanding of what's going on. Google's not trying to republish, so for them, their model is right. But, you know, in a very simplified form of SMT, this diagram here shows a rough idea. You have the bilingual data that gives you possible vocabulary. Then you use your monolingual data to give you part of your style equation. Now, if you feed it monolingual data that looks like Economist, Forbes, and so on, you help to stylize. If you feed it Harry Potter and others, you help to stylize in that direction. That's not the only tools that we use to do this, but it's a big part. We've put a big emphasis in our technology on learning style. And this is the difference you get. So this one Spanish input sentence translated using a business engine versus an engine designed with a target audience for children. So one reads like Economist and the other reads like Harry Potter. Now if you had the Economist version and you're publishing for children, even though it's perfectly translated, you have to rewrite the whole sentence. It's useless. That's what we mean about custom MT. It's focusing on what the customer wants in that particular writing style, targeted at a specific audience. Now, you hear a lot about hybrid models these days. It's important to distinguish between two models in particular. Asia Online's model is a hybrid model where you have rules and example-based preparing data for SMT. Okay? And then post-processing it afterwards as well, using rules and examples again. If you look at some of the other companies in the market, they use a rules-based front end, and then they do what's called statistical smoothing on the back end. It's a band-aid approach. It's give me my rules output and then try to smooth it over a little bit. It's a very different approach. So when you hear the word hybrid, make sure you understand which form of hybrid you're looking at. So the customization process is, from a high level, relatively simple. We have foundation assets, where we have foundation language pair and then foundation and domain. We're progressively building out 15 domains in every one of our 520 language pairs that we support today. Then we take our customers' original translation sources. There's various other data collections that we build up, we process, and we clean it. Now, I'm going to talk about cleaning quite a bit in a moment. But cleaning means getting pristine data to train your engine on. It's not about just removing HTML tags and formatting tags. So I'm going to go back to another example. If you were going to publish an article for Forbes, right, which one of these guys would you hire to write an article on global monetary policy? The ex-pro footballer, right, the financial analyst, or the mechanical engineer? Again, it's a no-brainer. But people always expect, oh well, a machine can do that, you know, out of the box. Focus is missing. When you translate that same article, you've got three people who know Chinese here. Bridget Jones, who's British and studying Chinese history. You've got John Smith, who knows finance and he's learning Chinese. And you've got Fei Wong, who is Chinese and who graduated business and finance at Harvard. Clearly, she's got the advantage, right? This is the same principle you should be applying to machine translation. High quality machines, high quality human output requires specialization. Don't expect something designed to translate sports to translate finance. That's not how it works well. So it's important that you have clean and consistent data, controlled data, common data, and very important to have current data. So just because you're Microsoft and you've done databases for 20 years, those 20-year-old TMs aren't necessarily what you want to use to build a translation engine. You want current terminology, current writing style, all of those things applied. Now, I look at it with clean data on this principle. Words are pretty much like sand on the beach, they're everywhere. Which beach would you rather go to? Right, if I dig my hand into the sand, am I going to get a nice handful of clean sand? Or am I going to get, I don't know what I'm going to get. That's the problem with the approach that we call dirty data SMT versus clean data SMT. So Google and others, they use what's called dirty data SMT. It's focused on more data is better, doesn't matter pretty much where the data comes from. Statistically, the good data should rise to the top and the bad stuff fall to the bottom. It's nice in theory, but the moment you start taking that approach, you lose control. Because that data is from anywhere and everywhere. In fact, some of that data is probably machine translated in the first place, especially if you crawled it off the web. So with the clean data approach, you take data from a smaller set of trusted data sources. And we've built engines that are pretty high quality with as little as 300,000 phrase pairs in the entire engine. Okay, it's all about quality. Now, the theory here is much more simple. If bad data doesn't exist, you can't reproduce it unless you feed it into the engine itself. Right? So the errors are different. The errors that you get are two things. Unknown words, primarily, are one of them, and it's easy to fix an unknown word, you just feed it in. The second error is grammatical patterns that aren't supported, so you get bad word order. There are more complex errors for long-distance reordering and depends on the language pair, but those are the general errors. Now, to plug a hole with one word is far easier than to try and compete with a bad phrase that is already statistically relevant, that's been there 10,000 times. It became statistically relevant because it's high frequency. So what do I mean by dirty data? Okay, here's some great examples. Some of them are pretty bad, like deformed person for the disabled toilet. Some of them can even be offensive, right? But these are human errors. Now, do you want to learn from these errors, or would you rather learn from higher quality content? So bad translations is one. Out of domain translations. Unbalanced and biased. Too much of one domain, not enough of another. Mixed and wrong language. All sorts of things. Diacritics missing is a huge problem in a lot of the data. Okay. Basically, anything that's not high quality and in domain, we consider bad data, dirty data translation. Let me give you an example using Google. So here's the word bank used in different contexts. So I went to the bank. Google got it right in the right context. Banking is in finance. I went to the bank to deposit money. Again, it got it right. I went to the bank of the turn in my car. Google decided it was a riverbank. Okay. As you go down, you'll see different contexts of river and so on. But something like, I banked my plane into a steep dive. And Google again thought it was finance. You'll see there's an overwhelming bias towards finance. Why is that? It's very simple. There's a lot more free data available on the internet that's bilingual in banking and finance than there is in swimming in rivers and aeronautics. So it's naturally biased. And that's why it's biasing the output towards those general directions. Data focus is important. We added by accident a little while back some antivirus data into a IT engine. And it changed protect your documents into protect your computer from documents. Right? The complete opposite meaning. Okay, so how do we clean data? We have a series of tools in the Language Studio suite that analyze data, they align data, they check grammar where possible, they check spelling, they do synonym matching and various other things to ensure that segment A on one side matches segment A on the other side. This is an example here. This is English Indonesian, and you'll see that it's matching up. Sometimes you get 2 or 3 sentences in a segment, and we score it on a scale of 1 to 100. Now, it's not just quality of the match. There's quality of the grammar, quality of many other factors that contribute to that score of 1 to 100. We then have a linguist who knows that language well go in and move the little slider up the top where it says 25 right now, and they adjust that on a set of data basis. Every data is different. You can't just say, oh, 25 for everything in this language. You get more complex text, more complex domains. So we have a linguist based on every set of data, set that adjuster, and it highlights yellow, green, and red. Red is, I can't find a match at all. Yellow is below the quality threshold, and green, it goes into the engine for training. It's a very simple, efficient process. Takes a little bit of processing time, but it always has a human linguist involved. That's one of the keys to building quality. So you see many sites now that talk about, oh, just upload your TM and we'll build you an engine straight away. If there's no human involved, you're adding dirty data. It's as simple as that. Right, so with dirty data, you've got to compete. The only real way to clean and fix dirty data as an engine is to throw more dirty data at it and hope. Right? You can't focus a fix. With clean data, 10 or 20 examples is usually ample to fix almost any problem. There are exceptions to that, but I would say 80 to 90% of problems can be solved with the right focused data. Right? So as it goes through, you'll start to see an improvement. Your data climbs, but it stays very, very focused. Now, we have holes in the data. That's one of the biggest problems with clean data SMT, is filling the holes. But the post-editing, whether you're using Trados, Kilgrave, whatever tools you're using, we can take that data straight back in either TMX or XLIF or through our APIs, and some of the products like Kilgrave already have integrated us deeply into their platform. So as you feed it back, our tools do analysis of what the MT fed out, what the human fed back in, and what's changed. It then goes and does a manufacturing process of generating more data to fill those holes until you get above the sufficient data threshold. So it's progressively updating the information. We add extra things in pre-processing, such as handling of runtime glossaries, non-translatable terms, pre-translation corrections, which actually fix your source. Okay. We take feedback from each customer that wants to use the engines, and each engine's independent, but they might want to use it for different customers. We have a Singapore LSP who is using a real estate engine, translating Chinese real estate listings from Chinese into English for commercial property. They have CBRE and Colliers as customers. Now, the interesting thing here is Colliers prefers different building names to CBRE. So with a runtime glossary, they're able to change the building names and specify which ones they want by client, yet they're sharing the same engine. Post-translation adjustments allow you to put in your style guide. When this happens, I want 4 spaces after this word. If it's used as a verb, I want it all capitalized, full caps. Those kinds of things are available. So we have a quality evolution cycle. This isn't a one-off, but you take the data, you cycle through, you take initial feedback from our linguists, we take expert user feedback, and so on and cycle through. The engine gets better progressively, and you'll see your post-editing effort each time reduces and gets faster. So you might start off with quite a few holes. You start to plug those holes, and very, very quickly you'll see the quality of your engine via human feedback and targeted corrections very rapidly improve. This is something that you can't do with the dirty data SMT approach. Okay, one of my last slides. So something I can't emphasize enough. A machine translation project should be treated pretty much the same as a human translation project. Not just data thrown at it and say, here, go and translate that, or build me a system with that. You want to have terminology definition, non-translatable terms, historical translations in the form of TM, style guides, quality requirements, mean, this is a simplified list, but it's the type of information that you need to do a high-quality human project. If the project's empty only, okay, you take out the edit and proof stage. Or if it's hybrid, human plus machine, then the only difference is you're adding a customized MT step in. This ties directly into your workflow directly after your TM step. TM match first, MT anything else. Works exceptionally well. So I'm going to hand over now to Iñaki, who's from Sajan, and he's going to talk about one of the projects we did with them recently.
I'm a bit smaller than you, Dion. Okay, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? For those of you who know me, good afternoon. For those of you who do not know me, I'm not Stephen Holmes, as you can see from the program. Stephen, unfortunately, couldn't be here today with us. But basically what I want to do is spend the next few minutes corroborating the presentation that Dion has just given and talking through a project that we have carried out in conjunction with them for a large client. Basically, we talk about quality at source, we talk about terminology management, enterprise terminology management, we talk about quality, we're talking about, I like Paul Leahy's reference this morning about pick up your fights and identify what you want to achieve quality, 100% quality. Is machine translation for all domains and verticals? Possibly not. Do we all read every manual of every machine or gadget that we buy? Most likely I don't. Do we require 100% perfect quality for those? Probably not. But in this particular case, the client wanted to eliminate the need for full translation. There was a number of considerations. There was time to market, but basically it was the sheer huge volume of work that they have to carry out. So physically there was no time for translators to carry out that job. Now when you think about it, a translator can translate, let's say, 4,000 words per day, average or whatever. We can run machine translation with Asian line and perhaps run overnight when we are in bed 250,000 words overnight. So absolutely, there's no comparison in terms of what translators can do in this regard. It was a global multinational on the IT domain, very well-known company, who incidentally has their own proprietary machine translation system, but they weren't too happy with certain languages, and they determined that they wanted to try different systems and see what happened with the outcome. To give you the overall result, the client achieved a 60% reduction in costs and 77% in time savings. Now, when integrating machine translation into the processes, first of all, it's important to define the quality expectations, like we said. What is that we want to achieve? And it starts with quality at source, as we said. This client in particular were very organized in the area of machine translation, in the area of translation memory. They had very good multi-million translation memory of good quality data that had been approved. But most importantly, also had style guides and enterprise terminology management. Not only the typical glossary of source and target, but proper categorization with metadata taxonomies specifying the contextual reference, the product, the vertical, the status of the term, whether it has been deprecated, approved, rejected, etc., which obviously is going to be critical in making sure that machine translation is refined for a better output. Like Dion says, if you input garbage, you're going to get garbage. Now, obviously, this had an impact as well as to the supply chain mechanisms and how the supply chain at Sajan had to look for perhaps not translators, but post-editors. And I think it's something that the industry has to start thinking about. Do we want translators to post-edit, or do we want post-editors with a different profile, and perhaps people who are more savvy or more able to identify recurrent patterns of errors, like we said before, than translators? And this is something, a consideration that I throw to the fore there to think about it. Obviously, this has an effect on pricing models, and the model is very simple. The more language and the more languages and the more words you do, obviously the per price per word is going to be decreased, obviously. And of course, this project was managed through the GCMS. As you know, GCMS is Global Content Management System, is Sajan's end-to-end globalization portal, and we carried out this. And later on, I will specify a couple of features of that portal. Now, when it comes to the volumes and the data preparation, there were many millions of high-quality data. As I said, there was translation memories, there was terminology, enterprise terminology management with categorization of metadata taxonomies, there were style guides and lists of do-not translatables as well. Now, style guides, like Dion was saying, the example of, do we need to tell that when we have a topic title and a health file, the translation is a nominalized form in Spanish? It should not be a gerund or an infinitive. Obviously, these kind of rules have to be applied. Do we need to tell how to deal with acronyms? Do we translate the expanded part of the acronym, or do we and create an acronym afterwards? Or do we simply translate the expanded part and leave the acronym in English? What happens with product names, with camel words? All these issues have to be in consideration as well. Of course, there was automation, workflow integration between GCMS and Asia Online. And of course, all the tracking of the project, all the system tracking was done through GCMS. And again, when working in machine translation, one of the issues is critical, is managing the training requirements for the future. Obviously, the more high quality data we input, the more volumes we input, the more languages we input, the better result we will get over time. Just to give you an idea of the immensity of the client in question, they have run 27 million words, this client, in the machine translation space in the last 2-3 years approximately. Since last October, Sajan and Asia Online have processed many millions of words through machine translation for this client, specifically in 2 languages, European Spanish and traditional Chinese. The results of the project were that the client's output in machine translation was improved by 5 points in the blue scale. So basically we achieve a 65% blue in the scoring, which is near quality translation in the output generated by the MT. Now, the Chinese language scored the first, scored much better. This is a very significant point. Scored better, and this is the opinion of the client. I'm not making this up. The client told us the quality of the machine translation is better than the first translation phase of the TEP process. In other words, it is absolutely near human, and the post-editing is needed. But the quality is absolutely there, and that was corroborated by the customer. The client was so happy about the results, obviously, that the result has been that they have commissioned us with another couple of languages, and we're going to start in the very near future with 2 more languages. Just talking very briefly about the GCMS Sajan architecture. As I say, it's an end-to-end globalization portal. I'm not going to explain all the basics you know about business intelligence and tracking and reporting. One thing that I would like to concentrate on is one of the modules, which is the GCMS Offering Coach. We've talked about quality at source here a lot. We have experience in professional services in Sajan of getting a multinational organization with different subsidiaries, with technical writers, let's say, in the US and in Europe, who do not share terminology at source. What happens is they may have 5-6 terms for the same concept. Obviously, we're all familiar with what's going to happen in the translation phase. Now, we have given training to the technical writers on both ends, actually meet them in one location in Europe, and give them training to the technical writers as to how to write intelligently with a view to localization. Do technical writers know that when you hyphenate something differently, or when you do colons, semicolons, or when you do format in bold and italics, it's not 100% match? No, they don't know that. So obviously, there needs to be a re-education or an education process by which technical writers or clients have to start thinking about globalization from English to English. In other words, at the very, very core of the source. GCMS, the authoring coach module, allows us to do that. It's basically, think about it like a translation memory and pulling out 100% matches and fuzzy matches at source level. So basically, if I write something like generic information and my next segment is general information, it's going to flag it to me and it's going to say, look, it's nearly 100% match. You've written something that is very, very similar, and the ROI of amalgamating and harmonizing this is going to be X. So it has an ROI analysis inbuilt as well in the system. And I think, if anything, one of the things to consider today is what we talk about: quality at source, enterprise terminology management, and machine translations. That's all for me. Thank you.
Did this include Dion? Because we didn't clap for him.
Thank you.
Questions for either Dion or Iñaki?
What was the feedback from your translators to the project?
Okay, the feedback from the translators was pretty good. As I say, the average score was 65% in the blue scale. So it's basically, and as I say, in Chinese, that was better than the first translation phase of translation, the quality. The translators obviously and the reviewers can carry out, or did carry out the reviews in GCMS Online. We have the linguistic workbench, which is a module that allows the review to be incorporated there, and obviously it's going to give you feedback and statistical as to why the change has been implemented. Is it a terminology issue? Is it a consistency issue? A stylistic issue as well? So overall, they were very, very happy with the outputs. Yeah.
What kind of file formats do you use during this entire process? Do you work from the source files, or is it that during translation you still use intermediate formats?
Yeah, basically the client had a proprietary XML format.
Okay.
And basically that's where professional services engage with our technical people in making sure that there was a transformation from the proprietary XML into XLIF.
Okay.
And once we had a standardized XLIF, we work on that. And then it's obviously to and from. Yeah.
Were you still using a TM?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Did you cut it at a certain level, like 80% or?
No, the TM that was provided by the client, as I said, the client had a huge amount of machine translation, of translation memory data that provided us, and we were very lucky that in most of the cases the quality was fairly good. In other words, going back to the issue of what you input in the machine translation is going to have results in the outputs. The quality from the machine translation, from the translation memory, was very high. The quality from the glossaries was very high. Was categorized. Metadata were there in order to identify the same term, different translation, different contexts. So the quality that we had up front from the translation memories and the glossaries was highly significant, in conjunction with style guides and in conjunction with lists of camel words and non-translatables.
One more bit of data there. The TMs, when they sent them in, we rejected about 26% of the TMs through our cleaning tools.
And what were the main problems?
A whole variety of problems, ranging from misaligned sometimes, very few, to wrong terminology based on preferred terms, too many words. Word count was in some 5 and the other side was 30. So clearly it's wrong. But a whole variety of reasons that the tools go through.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
One short question. You have to invest a lot in data cleaning. This means you have to need appropriate resources for making the data cleaning, and you also have to maintain different languages for the data cleaning, and you have to maintain the resources. How is the balance between this approach and, let's say, a traditional rule-based machine translation approach, where you also make data cleaning and you invent new rules for your machine translation system? How would you balance this in terms of investments?
Okay, actually, about 95% of the data cleaning is fully automated. Okay, you saw the final stage of it there. Behind that score of 0 to 100 is about 90 or 100 steps of automation and different tasks. Some of those include machine translation themselves. Some of them do synonym and grammatical analysis, various other things. So the main human step in the cleaning of the training data is that tool saying 25, 30, 35. Right. We send what's dirty back to the client as well, so they can see what was wrong.
Okay. So you have the feedback.
Right.
Thank you.
Just the last question.
So it seems to be very successful. Do you see any barriers to applying the same methodology across your other clients and other languages?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about quality before. If I put myself in the situation of a client, would I put through machine translation a huge cardiology device that may have an impact on lives? I would think twice about it, perhaps. you know, depends on the vertical and the client and the domain. We're saying that we're reaching human quality, but obviously if we go into verticals that are very, very specialized and very, very requiring of absolutely perfect quality, like medical, perhaps the issue is re-emphasizing the periods of post-editing.
But this was post-edited?
Yes, this is machine translation plus post-editing, yeah. But it was the IT vertical, it was an IT vertical. So you're asking me, can this be applied to most verticals and domains? The answer is yes, but perhaps the emphasis has been put into more post-editing if the vertical is something like medical.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, just to finish on that question. So is that going to be your Sajan approach now, to empty everything? Empty and post-edit everything? Because that's the logical conclusion. So.
Well, we examining that depending on the client's requirements, on the verticals, and the requirements of the client as well. So I can't elaborate on that any further. Thank you.
To introduce Martin Norstedt.